Eternal God, a mystery surrounds my life. What came before it and what lies beyond it are shrouded in darkness. But in the darkness is your presence, and in the mystery your love. No mind can grasp the splendor of your being, no tongue express the majesty of your works. Yet there are times when we sense a reality that is beyond our mortal sight. May this Sabbath be such a time for us. Help us to hear your voice, to find your image in our souls, and to be at peace. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. My God, the soul you have given me is pure, for you have created and formed it and breathed it into me, and you sustain it within me. So long as there is a soul within me, I will give thanks to you, Eternal One, my God and God of my ancestors, Sovereign of all worlds, Guide of every human soul. We praise you, O God, in whose hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. And let's read together. Praised be the one at whose command the world came to be. We praise you, our God, Sovereign of the universe, worshipped by your people, lauded and glorified by those who love and serve you. With songs of praise we extol you and proclaim your sovereignty, sole source of the life of all worlds. We praise you, sovereign God, to whom all praise is due. Kol kochvei boker lecha yashiru, ki zocharehem mimcha yazhiru. Uvnei Elohim omdim al mishmarot lail v'yom, shem ne'edar yadiru. Ukahal kadoshim kiblu mehem, b'chol shachar l'shachar, beitcha ya'iru. The heavens declare the glory of God.
The sky proclaims God's handiwork.
Day unto day utters speech.
Night unto night teaches knowledge.
Yet there is no speech, there are no words.
Not a sound of them is heard.
And still their call goes out to all the earth.
And their message to the end of the world.
God's teaching is perfect.
Reviving the soul.
God's word is unfailing.
Making wise the simple.
God's precepts are right.
Delighting the mind.
God's commandments are clear.
Enlightening the eyes.
God's doctrine is pure.
Enduring forever.
God's guidance is true.
And altogether just.
They are more to be desired than gold, than any amount of fine gold.
Sweeter than honey from the honeycomb.
Your servant pays heed to them. Who is aware of errors?
Cleanse me therefore of unconscious sins.
Hold back your servant also from willful sins.
Let them not control me.
Then I shall be blameless.
Innocence of grave transgression.
May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. To remain seated. So in the middle of page 135. Yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu, ha'el ha'melech ha'gadol v'ha'kadosh b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu, shir u'shvacha, halel v'zimra, brachot v'hodaot me'ata v'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'shirei zimra. Baruchu et Adonai ha'mevorach. Baruch Adonai Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer or uforei choshech, Oseh shalom uforei et hakol, Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha berachamim, Uvetuvo machadesh v'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit. Ma'arabu ma'asecha Adonai, Kulam b'chochma asita, Mal'a ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, Al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, Ve'al ma'orei or she'asita, Yifa'arucha sela. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer ha'ma'orot. And still together, great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching, make us faithful to your commandments, and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. We praise you, O God, and you have called your people Israel to serve you. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol lovcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol minatecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher mufim tzavcha hayom alavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'kibartam v'shitecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech u'v'shofrecha u'v'mecha u'kshatam le'od al-yadecha v'hayu letotafot v'einecha u'ktavtam al mizuzot beitecha u'v'yisharecha. Laman tizkaru v'asitem le'kom mitzvotai v'yitem kadoshim le'lavechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim להיות לכם אלוהים אני Adonai Elohechem. Good and beautiful and true, sound, established and enduring are these words now and forever. True it is, Eternal One, that you are our sovereign God and Redeemer, as you were the God and Redeemer of our ancestors. You are our Maker, the rock of our salvation. We have known you always as our helper and our liberator. There is no God but you. Truly, you are first and you are last. We have no Redeemer but you. You redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then, with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang to you this song.
שירה חדשה שיבחו ועולים, שיחה אספת היום, יחד כולם הודו והניחו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
We're going to turn over now to page 383. It's Rosh Chodesh Nisan today, so it's the tefillah for a special Sabbath, the Sabbath of Rosh Chodesh. So would you please rise? Page 383. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Emoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor Hanora, Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Cholei Ha'ol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imaot, U'mevii Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Le'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Be'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei Meitim Atah Rav Moshiach, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh U'Morid HaTav, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayei Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Nofim V'Rofei Holim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato L'Shelei Hafar, Michamocha HaGevurot, U'Midom Elach, Melech Menit U'Machayeh, U'Matziach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah l'chayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei ha'metim. In the middle of page 385. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, kashem shemakdishim oto b'shmei marom, ka'katuv al yad nevi'echa.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech haaretz v'odo.
Kavodo malei olam.
Baruch Adonai, Mi'lemono.
Uv'divrei kodshecha katuv lemor.
Yimloch Adonai le'olam, ve'lo ha'yitzion, v'adonai
page 387, let's read together. Our God and God of our ancestors, may our rest on this day be pleasing in your sight. Sanctify us by your commandments, and make us loyal to your teaching. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation, and purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, eternal one, let the holiness of your Sabbath enter our hearts, and may all Israel who hallow your name be exalted by its peace. We praise you, O God, for the holiness of the Sabbath. V'tzei Adonai Eloheinu be'amcha Yisrael, u'tfilatam be'ahava tekabel, u'tehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, ya'aleh ve'yavo ve'yizacher, zichronenu ve'zichron kol amcha beit Yisrael fanecha, l'tova ve'livracha, l'chaim u'l'shalom, v'yom rosh hachodesh hazeh. Our God and God of our ancestors, be mindful of us and all your people of the house of Israel. Grant us well-being and blessing, life and peace on this new moon of Nisan. Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova. This day remember us for well-being. Ufokdeinu bo livracha. Bless us with your presence. V'hoshienu bo l'chaim. Grant us renewed life. Baruch atah Adonai she'otcha luatcha v'yirah na'avod. And together, Modim nafnu lach she'atah hu Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avoteinu le'olam va'ed. Tzur hayenu magen yishenu atah hu l'dor v'dor. Nodeh lecha u'nesaper tehilatecha al chayenu ha'mesurim biyadecha ve'al nishmotenu chapikudot lach. ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלאותיך וטובותיך שבכל עת, ערב ובוקר וצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, ולך נאה להודות. And at the foot of that page, 389.
Sim, 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 shalom, tova uvraha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'or kol Yisrael arecha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha.
the Chatzi Hallel, the half Hallel for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu likro et ha'alel. So we turn over to page 474. In my distress I cried out to God.
Who answered me and set me free.
God is with me, I am not afraid.
What can anyone do to me?
With God as my helper,
I can face any foe.
it is better to take refuge in God than to rely on human beings.
It is better to take refuge in God than to rely on human power.
God is my strength and my shield.
And has become my salvation.
Hear glad songs of triumph in the tents of the righteous.
He is the one that does mighty deeds.
God's power is supreme.
He is the one that does mighty deeds.
I shall not die, but live.
To tell the Lord's goodness.
Open for me the gates of righteousness.
Let me enter them and give thanks to God.
This is the gate of the Eternal One.
The righteous shall enter it.
Blessed are you who come in God's name.
In God's house may you be blessed.
You are my God, and I thank you.
You are my God, and I exalt you.
We turn over now to our Torah service on page 481. We need that sheet. Which sheet? Yes. Yeah. Does everybody have a copy of the sheet with the Torah reading and the Haftarah reading? Does anyone not have it? Okay, we need one back here. Is this spare one? Here. Anything shared? You've got. Yes, I have. So, on page 481, there is none like you, Eternal One, among the gods people worship, and there are no deeds like yours. Your sovereignty is everlasting, your reign endures from age to age.
You
Please be seated, everybody. So, as you can see from the board, the Torah portion this week is Tazria, and Shabbat Tazria is possibly, in fact, probably the least favourite parasha in the Torah. To be honest, most rabbis emit a little groan when preparing to read Tazria, and it's certainly a really challenging one for the youngster who has a bar or bat mitzvah on that Shabbat. Tazria describes the period of impurity after childbirth, the ailment of tzara'at, which is a disorder which could affect skin, fabrics, leather and plastered building stone, and the role of the priest, which is to diagnose the condition, and when it is cured, to restore the person to ritual purity. However, as we have already seen, today is also Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first of the month of Nisan. The Shabbat on which Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls, or the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, is a special Shabbat in the Jewish calendar known as Shabbat HaChodesh, the Sabbath of the month. In other words, the first of the months and the one in which Passover falls. In a traditional synagogue, 3 scrolls would be taken out at this point. One for Tazria the Parsha, one for Rosh Chodesh, and one for this special Shabbat. So I've taken the liberty of selecting the latter for today, the special Torah reading for Shabbat HaChodesh, which comes from Exodus chapter 12, and I'm going to be reading verses 1 to 14. So in it, the Israelites are instructed to prepare for the coming exodus from Egypt. I think it's known as Ejexit. With a sacrificial meal on the same night that the final plague strikes the Egyptians. The Israelites are to roast a lamb and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They are to eat it hurriedly, all ready to leave for their journey ahead. Then they are instructed to remember that day and to celebrate it every year by repeating the meal and eating unleavened bread for 7 days. The meal, of course, became the prototype of our Passover Seder. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe ve'el Aharon be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor. HaChodesh hazeh lachem Rosh Chodashim, Rishon hu lachem l'chodshei hashana. Dabru el kol adat Yisrael lemor, be'asor lachodesh hazeh, ve'yikchu lahem ish seh levet avot, seh labayit. Ve'im yim'at habayit mihiyot miseh, ולקח הוא ושכנו הקרוב הקרוב אל ביתו, במכסת נפשות, איש לפי אוכלו תחוסו על השה. שא תמים זכר בן שנה יהיה לכם, מן הכבשים ומן העזים תיקחו. והיה לכם למשמרת עד 14 יום לחודש הזה, ושחטו אותו כל קהל עדת ישראל בין הערביים. ולקחו מן הדם ונתנו על שתי המזוזות ועל המשקוף על הבתים, אשר יאכלו אותו בהם. ואכלו את הבשר בלילה הזה, צלי אש ומצות על מרורים יאכלוהו. אל תאכלו ממנו נע ובשל מבושל במים, כי אם צלי אש, ראשו על קרעיו ועל קרבו. ולא תותירו ממנו עד בוקר, והנותר ממנו עד בוקר באש תשרפו. וככה תאכלו אותו, מותניכם חגורים, נעליכם ברגליכם, ומקלכם בידכם. ואכלתם אותו בחיפזון, פסח הוא לאדוני. ועברתי בארץ מצרים בלילה הזה, והכיתי כל בכור בארץ מצרים, מאדם ועד בהמה, ובכל אלוהי מצרים אעשה שפטים, אני אדוני. והיה הדם לכם לאות על הבתים אשר אתם שם, וראיתי את הדם, ופסחתי עליכם, ולא יהיה בכם נגף למשחית, והכותי בארץ מצרים. והיה היום הזה לכם לזיכרון, וחגותם אותו חג לאדוני לדורותיכם, חוקת עולם תחוגוהו. And the Eternal One said to Moses and to Aaron, saying, in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be for you literally the head of the months, the first one to you of the months of the year. Speak to the whole community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, take for yourselves each man a lamb to a family, a lamb to a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, then let him and his near neighbor take it to his home, proportionate to the number of people, so each person will contribute for the lamb according to what he or she will eat. The lamb must be perfect, tamim, without blemish, a male lamb, 1 year old. And you can take it from the sheep or from the goats. And you shall keep watch over it until the 14th day of this month. And then the whole congregation of the community of Israel will slaughter it at twilight. And they shall take some of the blood and place it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel of the houses in which they are eating. And they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in the fire, with matzot, unleavened bread, and merorim, bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it, please do not eat any of it, cooked in any way with water, but only roasted by fire, its head, its legs, and its insides. And nothing shall remain of it till the morning. However, if something is left over by the morning, you must burn it in a fire. And this is how you shall eat it, with your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in a hurry. It is a Passover offering to the Eternal One. And I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and I will strike down the firstborn in the land of Egypt. humankind and beast alike. And I will make judgments against all the gods of Egypt. I am the Eternal One. And the blood shall be for you as a sign on your houses, in which you are. And I will see the blood, and I will pass over. That's where the word Pesach comes from. I will pass over you, and you will not have the plague of destruction, which when I strike in the land of Egypt. And that day shall be for you a remembrance, and you will celebrate it as a festival to the Eternal One throughout the generations. It's an everlasting you shall celebrate it as an everlasting statute. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai notei haTorah.
Baruch Shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
Please be seated, everybody. So our Haftarah portion, which is on the other side of the sheet, is taken from the book of Micah, chapter 4, verses 1 to 7. The first verse of the book of the prophet Micah sets the text in the days of King Yotam, Ahaz and Hezekiah of Judah, the latter half of the 8th and the early years of the 7th centuries BCE, approximately the same time as 1st Isaiah. The northern kingdom of Israel has been destroyed by the Assyrians, who now threaten the southern kingdom of Judah as well. Micah was deeply concerned about the social injustices that existed in Judah and predicted its ruin and destruction. From prophecies of doom and God's judgment of the people, Micah switches to prophecies of consolation and restoration. Chapter 4, verses 1 to 7, provides a portrait of the future, when Torah will come forth from Zion and God's word from Jerusalem. The passage depicts a messianic age, and the image of swords being beaten into plowshares, spears into pruning hooks, an end to war, and the idyllic scene of all people sitting in peace beneath their grapevine or fig tree is one of the most popular, oft-quoted and condensed descriptions of an ideal future. So even though this is not the traditional Haftarah reading for today, we're really going off-piste a bit this morning, it's certainly fitting to read it on this Shabbat Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when we welcome in the month that will bring us Pesach. Passover is the great festival of freedom and redemption. As well as recalling the redemption of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, as we did in the Torah portion, the Passover Seder also looks to the future redemption heralded by Elijah the prophet, which is described in this Haftarah, which Hepzibah is going to read for us.
We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You inspired faithful prophets and took pleasure in the words they spoke in truth. We praise you, O God, for the gift of Torah, your servant Moses, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness.
Amen.
In the days to come, the mount of the Eternal One's house shall stand far above the mountains, and it shall tower above the hills. The prophets shall gaze on it with joy, And the many nations shall go and shall say, Come, let us go up to the mount of the Eternal One, to the house of the God of Jacob, that we may be instructed in God's ways, and that we may walk in God's path. For Torah shall come forth from Zion, the word of the Eternal One from Jerusalem. Thus God will judge among the many peoples and arbitrate for the multitude of nations, however distant, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take up sword against nation. They shall never again know war, but all people shall sit beneath their grapevine or fig tree, with no one to disturb them. For it was the eternal God of hosts who spoke. Though all the peoples walk, each in the name of its gods, we shall walk in the name of the Eternal One, our God, forever and ever. In that day, declares the Eternal One, I will assemble the lame sheep and will gather the outcast, and those I have treated harshly, and I shall turn the lame into a remnant, and the expelled into a populous nation. And the Eternal One shall reign over them on Mount Zion, now and forevermore. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have been our source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages, the faithful God, whose word is deed, and whose every word is true and just. For the Torah, for the privilege of worship, for the prophets, and for this Sabbath day which you, Eternal God, has given us, for holiness and rest, for honour and beauty. For all these we offer thanks. May all the living come to praise your name forever. Baruch atah Adonai.
Look at that. Good.
Would you please rise? Let's read the loyal prayers together. Eternal God, whose dominion embraces the universe, we ask your blessing for our sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth, and all the royal family, for those who govern our country, and all who influence the quality of its national life. Make them conscious of their responsibility, and teach them to exercise it in accordance with your will. May we all help to fashion in this country a society that excels in freedom and justice, tolerance and compassion, so that it may be a force for righteousness and peace in the life of humanity. Eternal God, as you blessed our ancestors in generations past, bless now this congregation, its leaders and its members, and all who enter this synagogue to meet, to study, and to pray. Comfort the sorrowing hearts among us, and heal those in anxiety or pain. May we all find here community and friendship, renewal of purpose and hope, a deeper understanding of our heritage, and a sense of your abiding presence. Bless all congregations of the House of Israel throughout the world. Let those who live under oppressive rule soon be freed, and may we all unite to witness to your truth and do your will. Eternal God, our rock and redeemer, grant blessing to the state of Israel, created to fulfill an age-old dream and to be a haven for the oppressed. Inspire its leaders and citizens with faithfulness to the aims of its founders, to develop the land for the benefit of all its inhabitants, and to implement the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice. May they live in harmony with one another and in peace with their neighbours, and cause to come true once more the ancient vision that out of Zion shall go forth Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem. יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, שתחדש עלינו את החודש הזה. Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, may this new month be for us a time of renewal. Grant to each one of us a long life of peace, welfare and blessing, a life of prosperity and health, a life guided by conscience, unmarred by self-reproach or shame, a life exalted by love of Torah and reverence for the divine, a life in which the longings of our hearts may be fulfilled for good. Rosh Chodesh Nisan Hu Hayom, the new month of Nisan, begins today. May it be the will of the Holy One ever to be praised, that this new month bring for us, for the whole house of Israel and for the world, life and peace, happiness and joy, deliverance and consolation, and let us say, Amen. Amen. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai ki niskav shemo levado. God's teaching is perfect. God's word is unfailing. God's precepts are right. God's commandments are clear. God's doctrine is pure. God's guidance is true. theme of both the Torah and the Haftarah is redemption. The former from Egypt, and the latter anticipating a future when all will be free and live in peace. Redemption is, of course, one of the main themes of the festival of Passover, which begins 2 weeks today. Our Passover Seder's have, I believe, 3 dimensions: past, present, and future. We engage in rituals that, past, transport us back to the slavery of our ancestors in Egypt and their liberation. Present, remind us of our current task to fight against all forms of slavery and oppression that still exist in our world today. And future, in inviting the prophet Elijah to our tables, inspire us to work towards a future world in which none are slaves, all are free. One of the central ideas of the Seder is expressed in the phrase, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, each person should feel as though he or she had actually gone forth from Egypt. We are instructed to relive the experience, to feel the humiliation and oppression of slavery, to experience the hope at last on that first Seder night long ago of an end to it. And there are some Jews in the Middle East that act this out by carrying large bundles around the Seder table to get the real feeling of being there. And I've even heard that some hit each other with leeks. At the Seder we taste the bitterness of slavery as well as the sweetness of freedom, and anticipate the years in the wilderness and the gradual, painful transformation of a rabble of slaves with a slave culture and mentality into a nation, a people with the Torah as its constitution and a unity of purpose. It's not just the Seder night and its rituals that involve us in reliving the experience. Even before the Seder itself, preparing both physically and spiritually for Pesach involves a great deal of work. Cleaning the house, clearing out the cupboards, getting in food suitable for Passover. I have heard it said that the preparations for Passover symbolize the hard labor the Israelites suffered under the Egyptians. And eating matzah for a whole week might be considered a trial for the digestive system, certainly. Something of a punishment. The minutiae that can be involved in Pesach preparation are beautifully encapsulated in a Talmudic discussion regarding removing chametz, all leavened products, from one's home. Every room is to be scrupulously cleaned and all the crumbs removed, even brushed from every nook and cranny with a feather. But what if a room was scrupulously cleaned and then bread was brought into it? Must the entire cleaning procedure be repeated? Rava, a 4th century rabbi living in Babylonia, asked, suppose a mouse entered a room which had already been searched with a piece of bread in its mouth, and a mouse then came out of the room with a piece of bread in its mouth. Can one assume that the mouse and the bread that came out are the same bread and mouse that went in which case no further search is necessary? Or is it perhaps a different mouse? Rava then went on to ask, suppose that the answer to my first question is that there is no need to assume a different mouse. What if a white mouse went in with bread in its mouth and a black mouse came out with bread in its mouth? Must one assume that it's a different piece of bread? Or can one suppose that it is the same piece of bread that the first mouse threw away and the second mouse picked up? And he goes on. Perhaps you will say, mice do not take food from each other. In that case, what if a mouse went in with a piece of bread in its mouth and a weasel came out with a piece of bread in its mouth? Can one assume that the weasel took away the bread from the mouse? Or could it be another piece of bread, since a weasel would have the mouse itself in its mouth? Suppose then that the weasel had the mouse and the bread in its mouth. But surely if it were the same piece of bread, the weasel would have the mouse in its mouth and the bread would still be in the mouse's mouth. But perhaps the mouse dropped the bread in its fear and the weasel picked up the mouse and the bread separately. The problem was left unsolved. And that's my word. Yeah, exactly. I think we might consider it a form of slavery to consider these matters in such intense detail. But anyone who can say that the rabbis didn't have a sense of humour, there is your... That's proof that they did. Anyway, it's an amusing anecdote, and I couldn't resist sharing it with you, but it does seem to be taking things way too far. Dealing with the minutiae can distract us from what is really important about the festival of Passover, which speaks to us universally and from one age to the next. The instruction to see ourselves, each one of us, as though we personally had been there at that dramatic moment of redemption, independence and responsibility, gives us a unique insight as we walk in the footsteps of our ancestors. We know that their journey was not easy. Indeed, it was a constant struggle, from their bitter lives as slaves in Egypt onwards. The Hebrew name for Egypt is Mitzrayim. A pun found in Hasidic writings associates Mitzrayim, Egypt, with Meitzarim, narrow straits. Egypt, therefore, allegorically speaking, is a place of constriction, paralysis. And there was also the slave mentality, which made it so difficult for Moses to stir the Israelites to action, and which gave him so much trouble in the wilderness, as they moaned and grumbled their way forward, even reminiscing nostalgically about the food and creature comforts they had back in Egypt. It is said that the people required both Moses and Aaron to lead them to freedom, Moses to take them out of Egypt, and Aaron to take Egypt out of them. Their journey was a struggle for survival, to keep the people's spirits up, to keep them looking forward with their eyes on the goal ahead, the goal of the promised land. Having left Egypt, it then took 40 years before the Israelites were ready to enter the promised land. And with all that's been happening in Westminster, I was wondering this week, if Moses had held a referendum and told the Israelites what awaited them, would they have chosen to remain or to leave? Of course, in the beginning, surely they would have said leave. But in the wilderness, who knows? I think I should stop there. How is reliving the Exodus story relevant to our lives today? Included in this powerful identification with the past is the acceptance of responsibility for the present. Reminding ourselves each year in such an experiential and profound way of the birth of the Jewish people and the development of their covenant relationship with God gives us an opportunity to consider our responsibility for the continuation and transmission of that relationship. At our Seder table, we are meant to remember the pain of the whip and the degradation of oppression to make us sensitive to the pain of others. We who were slaves and strangers should understand hopelessness, fear, and insecurity. In a similar way, our memory or experience, or our bearing witness to the stories of Holocaust survivors or other victims of persecution, gives us a responsibility to make those stories our own experience as far as that is possible, to transmit what we have heard and felt, the vital lessons that need to be learned, and to work towards a world in which slavery and oppression no longer exist. The Torah consistently, persistently reminds us to take care of the poor, the orphan, the widow, and the stranger. We are told to leave behind the gleanings of the field for them. Why? Because you were slaves in the land of Egypt. The Torah reminds us many times to work towards justice in the world and an end to slavery. Why? Because you were slaves in the land of Egypt. We are to treat strangers well. Why? Because you know the feelings of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. Our ancestors' experience of slavery and then freedom becomes our experience, and it is hoped, leads us to action. For 10 years, between 1984 and 1994, I lived in Los Angeles. While I was there, I learned from my teacher, Rabbi Mordechai Finley, great name, he was lovely with a shock of bright red hair. Anyway, I learned an interesting interpretation from him about the 3 pieces of matzah which are held up near the beginning of the Seder. Rabbi Finley asked why the middle matzah was taken out and broken in two. Then he went on to explain that each piece of matzah represents redemption. One is the past redemption from Egypt, which was complete, so the matzah is whole. One is the future redemption in the Messianic age, which will also be complete, hence the second whole matzah. And the middle matzah represents the present, when not all people are free or redeemed, not by any means, hence the broken piece of matzah. The Passover story serves as a model for any struggle for freedom, and it serves as a reminder to us that the world cannot be redeemed until all are free. And that is why, as well as the broken matzah, we take out a drop of wine with our little finger as each plague is mentioned. Our cup cannot be full as long as there are people in the world who are oppressed. It is then our duty and responsibility to be involved, to care about what is going on around us, and when possible, to act. Another of my Californian colleagues, Rabbi Harold Schulweiss, suggests that Elijah's cup, representing future redemption, be filled by passing it around the table for everyone to pour some wine into it from his or her own glass. In this way, we symbolically demonstrate that all of us must join together to bring about that redemption, a time when the middle matzah too will remain whole. And encapsulating that thought is the title of a book that I have on my shelf in my study at home. And the title is There Is No Messiah and You're It. So as we look forward to Pesach this year, it is my hope that we can envision the future mentioned at the end of our Seder of a world redeemed. That vision of the day when, as the prophet taught, the Sun of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, a future of peace and freedom for all people. May we be inspired to act in such a way as to bring that time nearer, and may that vision, that day, become reality in our world. B'mheira v'yameinu, speedily in our days. Amen. Service to the Aleinu on page 520. Aleinu l'shabeach v'aton hakol, l'ateit b'noam sefer asher sam chalkeinu yachid eshomo, l'kol aleinu malkuto.
השמיים ויוצא לארץ, ומשה יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו לעינוד, אמת מלכנו אפס עולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ידעת היום להשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת לאמור.
Trusting in you, eternal God, we hope soon to behold the glory of your might, when false gods will vanish from our hearts and idolatry cease forever. Help us to perfect the world by bringing it under your unchallenged rule, when all will invoke your name, relinquish evil, and turn to you alone. May all who dwell on earth come to know that to you every knee must bend and every tongue swear loyalty. Before you let them humble themselves, and to your glorious name let them give honor. Let all submit to your sovereign rule. May that time come soon and last forever. The ultimate sovereignty is yours, and to all eternity you will reign in glory, as it is written, the Eternal One shall reign forever. As we worship before you, O God, we think of those who once shared with us the joys and burdens of life and who are no longer in our midst. I'm sad to announce the deaths of two members of the community this week, Jackie Harris, the mother of Joseph and Isaac Harris, and Ray Lubert, the husband of Maureen and the father of Claire. And we stand with you, Maureen, as a community, and our thoughts and prayers and our hearts go out to you. We also remember, on the occasion of their yahrzeits, Rosalind Warner, daughter of Ursula and sister of Jennifer and Alison, Jerry Behrman, the brother of Gina Greenglass, Rose Marie Byrne, the wife of Max Byrne, Josephine Winberg Smith, the mother of Frank Daver Smith, and John Trafford, the father of Graham Trafford. Are there any other names that anyone would like to mention? People you're thinking of this Shabbat. The sorrow of bereavement is softened by the bond of love which continues to unite us with our dear ones, and by our cherished memories of them which we will always carry in our hearts. May all that was good in their lives remain with us as an influence for good. O God, grant consolation to those who are in sorrow, and light to those in darkness. Teach us at all times to put our trust in you and to praise your name, as we say together, Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'adala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'la'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitmaleh v'yithalal shnei d'kudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata. Ta'amiram be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min Shemaya, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל בני אדם, ואמרו amen. May great peace descend from heaven, and abundant life be granted to us, to all Israel, and to all humanity. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated, everybody. Kevin, just announcements.
Probably after the Ankelahinu.
Oh, okay.
After the last.
Yeah.
Okay.
After the service. I just want to see how they're doing downstairs. That might be part of the announcement.
All right. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to conclude with Ein Kelohim on page 528. 528. Eloheinu ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, ברכנו בברכה המשולשת הכתובה בתורה. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך shalom. May God bless us and keep us all safe from harm. May the light of God's face shine upon us and be gracious to us. And may God's face be turned towards us and bring us and all the world the most precious gifts of happiness and peace. Amen. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Please take a seat, and I'm going to hand over to Kevin now for announcements.
Hannah for Hannah. We call her Hannouncement.
Announcements.
Yeah.
Announcements.
This is a very special day today because it is the last Shabbat of the first section of Rabbi Frank's sabbatical. And Rabbi Rachel, we are indeed grateful and privileged that you took the service for us this morning. I think you might agree that in Rabbi Rachel, she is the epitome of all the blessings that we have received from all the wonderful rabbinic and lay people who have given us their time on a Shabbat morning over the last few months. Your knowledge, your enthusiasm, your inspirational points, your fabulous stories, and I will think of mice all the way. Your introduction to Pesach, which is growing ever closer, and I have a theory that all Jewish festivals come a week too soon. There's so much that was in this service which was really enjoyable. We were able to join in, we were able to listen, we learned new things, and we've been truly bless. I am most grateful, and hopefully you'll come to us again.
I certainly hope you'll invite us.
Invited.
It's been lovely to be here.
Yeah.
Can I just say thank you so much to Christine and Joseph as well?
Yes.
I was going to
I'm
do
sure
it
you
now.
were
Yeah,
going to,
of course.
but actually it's a real pleasure as when you're leading the service to have such incredible musicians in charge of that part of the service. It's really special.
And just to finish, they actually, as Rabbi Rachel pointed out, they have been reading 3 scrolls today, so they are running a little bit behind. So this announcement but it's worthy announcements that are going to be prolonged. It's been an incredibly difficult week for our community with illness and death of some of our members, but I think you've added a bit of strength to us all, a bit of light, a bit of hope, so thank you for that. I wish Janet and Alan much strength. I know they're going through a difficult time with Mike, and just wish all the best. And obviously Maureen. And the Shiva is
Sunday night, tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, and Monday night at 8 o'clock.
If you don't know Maureen's address, I'm sure.
31 Kinch Road.
Yeah. And also the Lavoya for Jackie Harris is tomorrow at Edgebury, 11 o'clock. Okay, and then next week it's business as usual. Frank will be taking this little service. It'll be a joint Friday service with the form in the sanctuary, normal start time. Any other announcements? We can take a slow walk downstairs and take a bit